if we look at research, they always suggest that our brain have that adaptability to transform.
Welcome to Creating Wellness Moments, the podcast where we dive into the depths of the human psyche, self-discovery, and personal growth. I'm Calvin Wong, your host and fellow explorer on this journey towards mental well-being. Join me as we uncover inspiring stories, expert insights, and practical tips to cultivate a healthier and happier life. Get ready to embark on a transformative experience, one episode at a time. Let's create wellness moments together. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Creating Wellness Moments. Today we have a very special guest. Pleasure having Irene Chin here today. She's a career and relationship coach that helps individuals on 3 C's. It's clarity, confidence, and commitment, so they can thrive and become more and more. And also, please sure to stick around to the end because Irene has actually provided us a very thoughtful gift at the end for the audience. So stay tuned for that. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Irene.
Yeah, thank you, Kelvin, for having me on your show as well. Yeah, it's my honor to be part of this channel.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. Perhaps maybe we could start off with a little bit about your experience and your story and how you became a career and relationship coach.
Yeah, so I guess, how I transitioned from being in HR corporate years for about 10 years was because, based on the, alignment to what I value and the purpose that I found, into, myself. So it started from how I explore and discover about myself, and how actually I realized that I have that unique talents, right, to be connected to people. And of course, I think basically, it's also part of the experience I have that I encountered throughout my childhood and the traumatized experience I have that actually transformed me to my missions to actually help others to actually transition themselves, shifting that kind of the resistant mindset to the resilience mindset and help them to transform because I believe that, whatever that is happening to us in our past does not have to define us. Yeah, so that is my start of the journey to become a coach.
Yeah. It's always the case, isn't it? We have a past that urges us to do something better based on negative circumstances we had in the past.
Yeah.
And I guess you already shared a little bit on your perspective on resilience, but perhaps you could expand a little bit more and explain how your approach to career coaching and relationship coaching is and what that means to you.
Yeah, so probably I will share about, my background and how actually it drives me, to build on this, coaching experience that is basically advocating for mental resilience, right? So, yeah, for my own experience that, I actually came from a very broken family, right? So at the age of 10, actually, I experienced a very traumatized experience where I saw my mom suicidal attempt when my dad was involved in an extramarital status, right? So growing up for me was not very easy. And I guess besides have to struggle through the life of poverty, I was like constantly living in that mentally abusive environment, right? Daily have to actually experience and see through my parents fighting, arguing, and even trying to kill each other. And I guess that have actually pushed me to find the way for me to actually survive. So I recall at the age of 17, like after I finished my O-level, actually I tried to run away from home in the quest of trying to find a more happier and fulfilling life. But I guess yet that escape ended up me in more struggle because having to fend for myself without support, I struggle between work, studies, finances, and that have actually took a lot of my mental well-being, I would say, right? So I personally myself have suffered in depression, got into drinking and ended up in several bad relationships. And I think the worst thing is that I am constantly having that suicidal thoughts whenever the memories or emotion trigger me of what happened in my past or throughout my childhood. So throughout my adolescence year, I did keep finding the answers to my adversity which I question a lot, right, Calvin? I question about who am I, why am I living when life are so struggle. And life has been very overwhelming for many, many years for me until I recall like in year 2008, I thought I was so lucky when I got my first offer job for Singapore, right? So I thought that, having that opportunity to run to Singapore and living whatever back in Malaysia will give me a new start to my new life, right? But I guess many times we hear a lot, right, that life doesn't go as smooth as we always plan to. Yeah, so that kind of opportunity I have landed me in another setback where after 9 months into my role in Singapore, I got retrenched. I recall that was a year when the market downturns was very bad, just like how we happen right now, the post-COVID time. A lot of people having to go through retrench and things like that. But I think it was the worst part of my life at that moment. Not only because I'm losing my job, but I have to face the visa deadline where I don't longer have the right to stay in Singapore. So I have to actually leave Singapore with no saving as well as no place to return to. And that is, a situation that I have to keep struggling to find, how to survive. And I guess I lived in that cycle for many years and have constant breakdown along the way, having that fear, self-doubt, and always struggle to find, how to survive. And for half that year, I've been, going through a lot of applications of job and things like that until, of course, I landed a role back in Singapore and then returned. But I think I live within the cycle of the mental breakdowns for years because even though that life has been progressive and developed, but I think that I've been always trapped with that adversity of in my life. Those emotions have actually keep me on daily, and I wasn't really happy in that life, and I felt like I'm just enduring that life itself in that situation. Whenever there's things trigger, it actually call out the same memory to me. And then I would doubt what will happen next. Would I do the same thing again? Until I myself discovered about our brains and the emotion power and the impact it has towards our well-being. So I think that is how my journey into transitions to advocate for mental resilience, because I actually learned the long-term effects of the mental well-being, and I actually realized through that learning actually to get out from my life stuckness is actually not the way of surviving, but rather it's a way of us thriving through it. And through that, I found the clarity that actually whatever happened to me is actually made me who I am today. And that perspective actually have shifted me, right, from my adversity and the block to become the strength of me, and that push me and transition me, like I said, to who I am and to what I'm doing today. Yeah, so that is the story of how my transition to become a coach and how I was so determined to help others, to do the same as well.
Yeah. I mean, that's it's quite a journey is to be able to hear all the struggles that you've gone through, especially with it must not been easy with your parents fighting and the suicide attempts. I can't even imagine, but I'm really happy that you're in a better place now and you're able to take your experiences and help people so they don't have to go through similar roadblocks or struggles that you had. I think that also explains maybe why you were also in HR.
Yeah, definitely. Because I think I wrote a lot about the post about how what drive my value is, because I think being a HR is always about people, right? We have always had that connectivity with the people, and I always drawn to people, and I think part of that is actually transformed me to use the skills that I have in the past, right, to transition myself into what I'm doing today. Because basically to connect with people in terms of coaching, we need to have that relationship connectivity with them, to build that trust in people, Yeah, so that is one of the reasons, that bring me with my value along.
Yeah, definitely. I would say, the trust and the connection is a big one. Earlier, you mentioned about learning more of the scientific side of having a resilience brain. Can you share some of those with me?
Yeah. So basically, before I move on to sharing about the resilience brains, probably I just would like to bring all of us to understand, what basically resilience mean, right? So I think when we talk about resilience, right, Kelvin, we usually refer or we will understand that resilience means someone's ability to actually overcome and endure challenges, right? And when they can do that, they basically survive through that challenge, right? But today, I would like to offer a different perspective about, resilience, and that is that resilience is not just about us surviving through whatever challenges that we have, but rather about us thriving through it, right? So the difference between these is that when we talk about surviving, we are referring to how we endure life challenge, right? We didn't give up. Just like how I didn't give up with so many struggle that I have, I continue to put on and to grind through. And but most of the time, I'm pretty unhappy, right? And of course, in the process itself, my personal and professional life actually suffer, right? So for people who actually survive through this form, they are actually continue to live by enduring and tolerating what life have come to them on their way. But we talk about these different perspectives that I have about resilience. When we talk about thriving, it's actually on the other hand that means we step out instead of we putting up, right? So when we step out, we do whatever it takes to meet that challenge face to face, right? And the important part of it is that in that process itself, we actually transform. We become the better of ourselves, and that is what I call the true mark of resilience, right? So that is what my concept is about when I talk about the resilience and what are these difference, right? So going back to Kelvin earlier, you were asking me about how that actually connect in terms of science and things like that, right? Being a brain-based trained coach, my work is all around scientifics, based on science research and things like that, right? So on science perspective, and if we look at research, they always suggest that our brain have that adaptability to transform based on our experiences. And in order for us to actually build on that lasting resilience is to enable us to turn all those fleeting experiences that come through our life, right? And build that into a long lasting resources that build into our brain. So to put it in a layman term, right? It means that we must be able to identify the factor that actually contribute to the challenges and learn from them, right? We always hear about people saying that you must learn from your mistake, but what is it about that, right? And how would that help us? So in order to do that, and whenever we are able to do that, it actually will help us to shift that perspective to be more appreciative of what it taught us. And it will help us to build on more confidence and be more committed to our own well-being. And I guess that is how actually it helps me to gain insight on my own personal experience and through all these studies that I learned from the researchers and how I actually apply to my coaching practice. Yeah, so that is how, or based on science, how our brain can adapt, through learning,
Let's see. I got a question maybe on how, for example, you were talking how we learn from our past experiences. And in a sense, it's almost like comes in two different kinds. One would be more logical, how you understand the past situation and can learn from it logically. But sometimes you might understand a topic or a situation in the past logically. However, the emotional aspect hasn't actually got to the same point where the logic is, if that makes sense, where you're emotionally haven't accepted the situation yet, even though logically you understand the mistake, quote unquote.
Yeah. So I guess, when we talk about the logical part and the emotions part, right, Kelvin, actually our brain and our emotions are actually connected, you see. So generally, maybe I will just try to explain how our brains works and how it actually connected to that emotion that we have, right? So our brains actually in generally, it operates into two skills, right? It's either we act on to the pleasant situation, like when we are happy, excited, things like that, or either towards the unpleasant when we are sad, frustration, and things like that, or either it's on the activated mode when we react, or when we are deactivated, that we are being passive towards the things, right? So whenever there's a situations that triggers our thoughts, right? Well, I mean the thoughts is I was referring to our brain and mind, it will lead actually towards our emotions. And the emotions is actually our feelings, right? Basically. So all our feelings have a functions that will create that physical sensations towards our body. For example, when we are in fear or we are afraid, it will direct our body energy towards preparing ourselves to either we are freeze or we are kind of like fight or flight towards the situation, right? Or when even we are sad, it will help us to reflect on and then process on it and seek comfort, right? So all these feelings, I would say, right, Kelvin, is meant to actually flow, whether they are good or bad, right? Everyone has that basic emotion, but how yourself, Kevin, myself, or even other people experience it are all different because our emotional reactions are actually built on our belief system throughout the experiences we have, just like for myself throughout my childhood, my background and how, my parents brought me out or the people that is around me, right? So this is all the experiences that will shape our emotional story. And then in the long run, ultimately it become our core emotions. And then that core emotions will actually define yourself, who you are, and how you see that worldview, right? So our brains will actually predict how we respond to these certain life challenges that we face, and then it will actually respond to the experiences and then create our actions towards it, right? So for example, we talk about if you have been hurt before, Kelvin, in the past relationship, right? So when you meet a future relationship, right, you will be much more careful about it because your brain have that memory towards the experience that you have, right? Or even when you are being told that you are not good enough, successful enough, wealthy enough, or even strong enough, then your brain will actually predict that is who you are. So basically, if I put a metaphor to it for a better understanding, is our brain. It's just like those computer memory, right? We store a lot of things inside this computer memory, like all the informations that we have. And over the time, when we wanted or we encounter similar things, we need to pull out these informations, right? So that is how our brain actually works towards the experiences that we have. So when we encounter someone or similar experiences, it will trigger that memories and then we will respond automatically to that memory. Of course, I mean, like you say, without with the physical and emotion, we can't control all this emotion because generally this is how our human nature responds to our experiences. But what I always would say is that even we can't control these emotions, we have the ability to control the awareness of these emotions. Yeah, so that is how our brain have a connections to these emotions that will bring out all these things. But in order for us to understand all this, in order for us to be more, attuned to it, to react to it, then we have to have that awareness approach. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I believe I've heard from like Joe Dispenza before. How he talks about we have all these negative experiences we built up, and we're essentially living in the past by reacting from the previous data that would be given.
Yes, correct.
And unfortunately, due to the survival instincts, we're a lot more prone to remembering negative situations, right?
That's
So
correct.
how would you say how we could start to shift our mental resistance into resilience then?
So with that, understanding, right, Kelvin, usually the approach that I will suggest is about the mental approach of shifting, right? That involve actually in terms of revealing the emotions and then reshaping that thoughts patterns. So again, recap towards what we shared earlier, right? When the situation arises, it triggers our thoughts, causing our brain to search for that relevant information. And then it will call out those memory and then it sends our emotions that way. So instead of letting the emotion or the experiences flick through us, the approach I will actually encourage my clients to do is to take a pause, right? And take control when that situation actually trigger your thoughts or your emotion. So the self-coaching technique usually that I will advise people, is to actually categorize your emotions first, right? Identify what that feeling is to you, right? By asking yourself, what are these emotions? Are they happy? They sad? What is it? You need to be embracing the emotion. You have to come to terms to categorize that. Then it will allow you to take notes of what's actually happening in your body, because that is how it sends a sensation to our body, right? We become probably, when we thought we are not happy or frustrated, we become angry, So that is a sensation that is sent to our body. So take note of what actually happening in your body and how actually that affect you overall, right? So this awareness is actually the control where we are in our conscious mind, right? It helps us to actually take awareness towards our actions and then prevent us to actually react on that kind of like autopilot, right? Just without thinking, right? And it's just based on what the past experiences and memories that we have, right? So, and then when we are able to control that, usually it will present us with a different choice, right? You will be more aware that there's a possibility of different choice. And that choice will actually, lead you to a different actions and subsequently a different outcomes, right? So what I always say to people or when I coach people is that remember that it's not what actually happens to you, but rather how you choose to respond that actually make that difference, right? So I think we heard a lot about all this, right? But sometimes we doesn't understand how actually that connected with our brain, our emotions, that we just, take that metaphor, that, we shouldn't respond or react to it, but we don't understand how actually connected and how it can help us, right? So usually when someone want to change the outside, right, you must first change the inside, because changing the attentions of your thoughts, because that is how you actually influence how you feel. Like I said earlier, right, create the emotions, and how you feel will actually indirectly influence how your body will react towards that experiences, right? And how your body actually reacts will in turns influence how you behave, and how you behave will actually define who you are and what you experience in life. That is how it actually come about, right? So revealing that feelings will help us to reframe that thoughts, shifting that perspective, and help us to have that clarity of what's actually hold us on that specific triggering moments that actually come to our way, that actually would be also the stumble or the block that will stop us to move forward, right? So again, transformation of shifting from resistance mind to resilience minds is always begins when we ourselves are curious, right, about what happened in ourselves, our behavior, right, and to seek the truth of it, and also in order for us to stop ourselves from reacting on that autopilot reaction, I would say, right? So basically that is how the shifting is, because if today, right, Kelvin, we observe even in our own life, right, many a time I would say that the explanation that we give to ourselves and to others for the behavior is actually, in the form of resistance most of the time. Like you say, most of the time, we know that it's right, but we are focusing on that negative part, the resistant parts, right? That is how the human way of trying to avoid seeing more deeply into their current state, right? So if I will refer back to my own experience, right, and how I actually learned from it is that, I pretty much very angry, I would say, with my dad, right, for causing all that to my family, right? But I think if I were to actually look deep down or gain that insight, actually what I'm telling myself is that I desperately want his love for the family, right? So for us, it's the same. To be able to gain insight to our desire or what we are missing out when we are growing out, right? Those experiences is us having that clarity towards what these challenges have taught us, and that clarity itself actually will help you to develop that resistance mindset, to be more resilient. So that is how somebody can actually work on their own, how to approach that situations.
Yeah, Irene, thank you so much for sharing that, and the work you're doing is actually, it's very important. And so the thing you mentioned about, having the awareness and and trying to not have that negative response. And it's really funny. So I had this situation that happened to me yesterday. So yeah, because I wasn't having the best day, and I was aware of the response or reaction that I'm providing, and I was really just fighting myself, and it's like letting myself almost indulge in this negative experience instead of trying to do something that would be more beneficial, essentially, right? And when we talked a little bit earlier how we're so caught in these past patterns that even though it's a negative feeling, it's really that comfort zone still, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes it so tough for most people to get out of this, right?
Yeah, definitely, Kelvin. Usually, I always share with people, like earlier I've mentioned, whatever emotion is, whether it's good or bad, it will actually flow through, right? But the important part is to embrace these emotions, right? Embracing it does not mean that we are avoiding it or we are actually trying to push away or denying it, right? But rather embracing it in terms of to gain more insight, into what's actually this feeling is all about, and where they are coming from. Because a lot of time, Kelvin, if you look at that, right, sometimes, like I said, the brain may have kept the memory in the past that tell us that in future, this is how we are supposed to behave or react, right? But most of the time, if we were to pause and take control over that emotions that happen in the current state, we will realize that whatever that happened in the past may not actually is going to happen right now, right? It's not going to be the same, right? So having that understanding allow us to stop ourselves to actually dwell deeply in that by just bringing out the memory, because all this memory is supposedly built on the brain that help us, right? It's like primitive informations in the brain that we doesn't need to relearn the things again when we meet the same situation, right? Just like how we learn cycle, right? When we cycling, from young, it just become part of us, it built in us. So one day as we grow out, when we see the bicycle, we took on it and then we just ride, because it become part of the memory that we learn, right? But in order to know that certain things doesn't really have to happen like it have in the past, or we could have actually learned from what we have experienced in the past. That is the way how we have to approach it. Take a control, take a pause, and be aware of it. And the most important thing is to ask yourself that question, right? And that will actually give you more awareness and stop you from just pluck out the information and just react. So I guess you probably could try that, in future if you have come across any situations that always take that, categorize your emotions, and then ask yourself, how does that send to you in your body, and how can you react, and what feeling does it have for you, and how that affect you. Just that 5-10 seconds of the awareness of the pause, it can make a lot of difference. Yeah.
Hey there, amazing listeners. Before we dive deeper in today's insightful conversation, I want to take a quick moment to give a shout out to the driving force behind this podcast, my very own mental health focused creative production agency, Calvin Wong Media. As you know, creating wellness moments is all about exploring the depths of the human psyche and fostering personal growth. And guess what? It would not be possible if it were not for Calvin Wong Media. We conceptualize, humanize, and bring your story to life using unique storytelling techniques that engages the audience. So, the next time you're inspired by an episode or find yourself engaged in a thought-provoking conversation here, remember, that's the result of the support of Calvin Wong Media and its lovely kinds. If you're looking to amplify your message, tell your story with authenticity, and connect with your audience on a deeper level, reach out to us at calvinwongmedia.com. Now back to the conversation on creating wellness moments. Something you mentioned also about you have to build from the inside out, and the landscape of how we live today within society, with social media and the pursuit of financial riches. It's I think that's a very important message for people to realize that building the inner work and living from an inner perspective to an outside first, because the money is not going to make you happy if you're not happy, if you're not whole inside, right?
Yeah, it's true. Sometimes it's itself, we also need to understand, why are we valuing money over something else, right, Kelvin? Because a lot of time we need to understand what actually that things inside us that is priority in our life, right? Having that understand, I would say it gives you a more perspective towards what you are actually driving your life forward, right? So for myself, like I say, I always value inspirations, right? But why I value inspirations and how does it help me is because it's all through my experience that I have that formed me to today I am. And why I'm inspired to help people is because that will drive me to being who I am, towards the desire or the things that I could have missed out in the past, right? Just like I've mentioned earlier, I lost the love for my dad, right? But because of the understanding that it's not about the losing that caused me to not be able to thrive through, but it's about the missing of that love that causing me to not able to thrive through these experiences or these challenges, right? So with that context, to fulfill what my fear, to fulfill what I'm missing back then in my childhood, I have to seek more of love. I have to do things that is giving in loving form. And that, if I'm able to do that, it fulfill me, right? So when it fulfill you, it shifts you from that kind of negative thoughts, right? To become a more positive, and a more resilience mindset, I would say, rather than being resistant, right? Like I'm afraid to fall in love again because I saw my dad, and I blame all the men in the world. You know what I mean? Yeah.
I do know what you mean. But I would say that's probably the hardest part is if someone were to start this journey and they wanted to commit to building more mental resilience, living a better life, it's always very difficult in the beginning,
Yeah, definitely.
And how would you say is the best way for people to be a little bit more committed to their life and building more mental resilience? Because I find that the hardest part is people stop doing it because in any situation, even like running, is just they feel like it should be happening sooner, but it's really like the nuances and the small changes that you don't really see that have the biggest long-term benefits. And how would you allow people to make it the journey more fun and more proactive, and they could actually see themselves benefiting step by step?
So usually for that kind of situations, we understand that a habit. We talk about a little bit of habit here, right? Habit does not actually develop in a day, right? It's throughout the whole years of us growing up, right? And become part of us, like I say, become part of behavior, right? So in order for you to shift, everyone, or even I myself, and you yourself recognize that it's not easy, right? So usually a habit is formed, and in the long run, and to break the habit, you also need that consistency to actually break the habit, right? So usually for me and my clients, that we will work towards what actually stopping them, and to consistently, reframe, and works towards the habit that they want to change, right? So usually, what we will work on is to look at that 3 C's that build on mental resilience, right? First of all, we have to understand that, the first C is your challenge, right? And then to look at the ability of this challenge, and took it as not the adversity, but rather the opportunity for you to actually, not to fight in the occasions of the flight, right? And then to build on that committed system. The committed system is you, yourself. What are you going to do about it? What can you do about it? It's not how, right? When we talk about how, it's about finding solution. A lot of people, when they talk about how, it's very difficult to find that how, But when you talk about what, it brings you to the concept of what can you do to stop this habit, or what can you do to consistently do that? Build on that committed system that drives your life, and the one that could actually help you to focus on the well-being aspect that you wanted to, right? And of course, the last but not least, the other C is that always having that control, the sense of belief that we human have the powerful brain to influence the things and make things better, rather than become the victim, right? And like I said, the constant of practicing on reshaping the thoughts that come true is actually helping us to actually build on a more neural pathway to exchange, what we have learned in the past that doesn't serve us, to build onto a new pathway that will lead us to a better aspect, right? So it takes a lot of time to shift that, right? And usually I would say, it could be like about 6 months or so, 30 days or so, Yeah, so you need to have that consistency, to build on.
Scheme of things, that 30 to 60 days to transform your whole life, especially if you've had all these past experiences that have been hurting you, it's really not that long in perspective, right?
Yeah, no, that is just a minimum, I would say, for someone to just shift a certain habit. But I guess, like I said, the consistency must be there throughout, your life. Just like if you are not happy with this situation, you have to consistent to see how you can reframe, as when it becomes longer, as you reframe it, and you change that pattern, it actually will build a new neural pathway that become a new memory to you. So when that happens, or similar things happen, it will no longer call the old memory. It will refer to this memory, just like how our computer memory, right? We save, and then we found a new information that is more better, right? And then we overwrite it and we auto save it. So when it becomes that, the next time when we pull out, is this new information that we have rather than the old one, right? So it's a consistent works. And to be frank, even for myself, like I said, it happens for me like many, many years of adversity and challenges that hit my life. It definitely doesn't take, a day. And even to today, being a coach myself, I have to constantly, train my brain to actually reframe the thoughts patterns that I have, because I don't think anyone will be, free from adversity, especially in today's VUCA world, right? When we see a lot of people are experiencing this. And usually the response to many of them is that, they are very easy and frustrated, and they give up very easy because of all this, right? So having that thoughts and learning how the brain works will give you a more factual, rather than we say that we have to keep on looking at positive, we have to keep on looking at positive. But how? But when you know the scientific about the brain, how it works, I guess it will give you a more concrete evidence base that actually really our brain have that power to shift and reshape, and build on a neural pathway for us to move forward. Yeah.
Irene, I'm so glad you're guiding everyone through this journey that, it's very difficult, I would say, if you're to do all this on your own, especially without the additional knowledge that obviously that you've taken on certifications and all sorts of books you read along with
Yeah,
your lived
definitely.
experiences, right? So I really appreciate you doing that, which actually really brings me, I'm really excited to really hear about the special gifts that you're providing everyone today. If you could share that with me and everyone else.
Yeah, so Kelvin, thanks for having me as well. And I've mentioned earlier, right? It's always important for us to actually do what actually makes us happy, right? And I guess that is why I'm actually driving into giving this gift, because it's important for me as well to give back to others. Like earlier we share, right, about how our brains actually help us when we are activated, right? So when giving is also a form of how it can activate our brain neural ways to actually bring that feelings of happiness and gratitude towards us, right? So that is when I reflect on to those who have supported me throughout my journey, everyone around me, friends, mentor, coaches, and even people that contents in the LinkedIn, right, have been all over me in my journey together. So, and I guess you yourself also, Kelvin, are part of my journey, and because of that, I would love to extend this gift to your subscriber and those people who are listening to you as a form of supportive back to you as a community, right? So I actually come up with this gift of giving, which I call it, and the first three applicants were actually who are interested, I would say, will actually have the opportunity to be coached by me on the 90 minutes one-on-one sessions, and then they will also have a post coaching session with me about a 60 minutes. And I think for those interested applicants, they can actually apply that through the link, that is shared later on, through your channel. Submitted in the applications, and I will follow through from there. But of course, for those who are not really interested on the coaching part, of course, your subscriber and listener can always have the opportunity as well to actually download about 61 pages of ebook that I have created, which is called Be Your Best Version, right? And this ebook actually includes a lot of practical exercise and informations to actually guide those individuals to becoming their best self, which is what I aspire to always help others, right? And in order to do that, they can go to the site as well, and there's a code CW, right? They can enter to download that. Yeah, so yeah, that is part of the giving that I have, towards the people who have been supported me. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, Irene. So once again, it's going to be the first three applicants will be able to get a coaching session with Irene, one 90-minute one, and one post session that is 60 minutes. Is only available for the first three people. For everyone else that's listening that might be also interested in being their best self, she's actually created a 61-page tips and tricks with actionable exercises. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right, Kelvin. Yeah.
Excellent. And the code is CW. I will put all the information on the screen or below. And thank you so much again for coming on the show and taking the time to be vulnerable and share about your life experience and how you're able to empower people now and allow them to thrive and be better people. So
yeah, it's my honor, Kelvin, to be part of your channel. Yeah, like I say, and thank you for having me as well, be part of the guest. Yeah.
Thank you. Let's create more wellness moments together.
Yeah, together we join the effort to build a community to thriving.
Yeah.